For generations, the historical record shows that Toronto's grand destiny, from the towering concrete structures defining the skyline to the daily news cycle, and even the sports arenas drawing weekend crowds, has been shaped by only 10 families. These are not merely wealthy citizens. They are modern dynasties. Their empires were built on raw ambition, cold strategy, and generational inheritance. Over decades, they became deeply woven into the fabric of Canada's grandest metropolis. Some operate as silent shareholders, others as highly public chairmen, the property barons dictating urban growth, and the media giants directing the country's daily discourse. Their reach is boundless, their capital is absolute, and their ledger is historic. Who are these hidden rulers? How did they construct these dynasties? And how do they command such immense authority over the nation? We must analyze the records of the 10 most powerful families in Toronto's history. The archives begin with a dynasty forged in the pharmaceutical trade, a story of massive fortunes and a dark mystery. The Sherman family. This massive empire was founded by Barry Sherman, a ruthlessly brilliant strategist who founded the generic giant Apotex. In 1974, his primary objective was to manufacture highly affordable medicine, and in doing so, he fundamentally disrupted the entire domestic medical market. He waged endless legal warfare against major pharmaceutical giants, forcing cheaper alternatives onto the open shelves. This combative method won him public praise, but made him dangerous corporate enemies. Yet the historical outcome remains undeniable. Apotex expanded from a two-man startup into a massive global entity, exporting to over 115 nations and employing thousands of workers, primarily within the Greater Toronto Area. It grew into the nation's premier drug manufacturer, born solely from its founder's relentless determination. Yet Sherman lived with extreme frugality. Despite his billions, he drove cheap vehicles, reinvesting everything into research and the courtroom battles that defined his career. But this grand empire took a dark, public turn in December 2017. Barry and his wife Honey were discovered deceased in their suburban mansion. Investigations later ruled the tragedy a targeted double homicide. It remains one of the nation's most infamous cold cases, casting a dark shadow over their lineage. Honey Sherman was a revered philanthropist, a prominent figure in local charitable circles who heavily funded major healthcare systems, prominent universities, and Jewish community organizations. Following the terrible tragedy, the surviving family members navigated profound personal grief, all while managing a massive estate. In 2022, Apotex was sold to an American firm, marking the absolute end of an era. Yet, massive liquidation from that sale ensures the Sherman lineage remains among the wealthiest in the province. Their modern legacy remains deeply complex, a record of supreme industrial triumph, forever bound to a brutal, unsolved mystery. Anyone who has walked through a suburban commercial plaza in this country has stepped foot into the domain of Mitchell Goldhar. His rise is marked by recognizing a massive structural shift others completely overlooked, leveraging a single strategic partnership into a vast property empire. Goldhar established the retail giant Smart Centers. This is the very enterprise that essentially pioneered Canada's Walmart-anchored shopping plazas. In the early 1990s, Mitchell Goldhar envisioned something remarkably bold. Recognizing Walmart's colossal potential, he persuaded them to partner with him for their historic 1994 Canadian expansion. While traditional developers clung to outdated, enclosed malls, Goldhar perfected the concept of the open-air power center. These were massive commercial hubs, boasting giant retailers and endless parking. He did not just build a handful, he constructed them at an astonishing pace, erecting over 175 Walmarts and more than 265 shopping plazas nationwide. His strategy succeeded incredibly well, crowning Smart Centers as the undisputed retail giant and securing Mitchell Goldhar's place as a billionaire. Yet, as we trace his rise, his empire extends far beyond retail. Today, his companies are reinventing these sprawling commercial properties into fully master-planned neighborhoods. Their crown jewel is the massive Vaughan Metropolitan Center, a 100-acre metropolis converting quiet suburban fields into a bustling downtown core with high-rises and green spaces. This masterstroke of urban planning effectively secures his organization's growth for many generations to come. He remains a true industry titan. Goldha preserves room for personal passions, remaining an avid sportsman who regularly plays hockey and squash. Remarkably, he also owns the prestigious Israeli soccer club Maccabi Tel Aviv. In Canada, he supports civic causes and has even lectured on real estate at the University of Toronto. His architectural footprint remains indelibly etched across Toronto's suburban region. It is a legacy that began with simple storefronts and ended up building modern urban centers. Today, historians estimate his total personal wealth at nearly $2.7 billion. Now, let us turn to another legendary figure. Few names command as much respect in Toronto as Larry Tannenbaum, a man worth $2.8 billion. He stands as the visible champion of the city's sports scene, alongside major achievements in heavy industry and charity. Tannenbaum serves as chairman and part owner of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, the powerful conglomerate controlling the legendary Maple Leafs, the Raptors, Toronto FC, and the Argonauts. Securing a foothold at the center of local sports was his ultimate, lifelong ambition. He came from a family of great influence. His father, Abraham, had migrated from Poland to build a formidable steel and real estate dynasty. Larry initially followed that path, earning an economics degree from Cornell before joining the trade. He took over the family firm, Kilmer Van Nostrand, transforming it into a massive civil engineering powerhouse that constructed vital subways and bridges. Yet sports remained his true calling. In 1991, his ambitious bid to bring an NBA franchise to the city fell short. He refused to yield. By 1996, he secured a stake in the Maple Leafs, eventually orchestrating the historic merger of the hockey and basketball franchises. This created the massive sports conglomerate we see today. Under his stewardship, the city entered an unprecedented golden age of professional sports, immortalized by the Raptors' historic 2019 championship victory. But his reach goes far beyond team boardrooms. He acts as a highly respected governor across hockey, basketball, and soccer leagues. This structural authority gave Toronto a mighty voice. Outside the sporting arena, Tannenbaum continues to command massive influence through his family's private investment operation, the Kilmer Group, though his most enduring legacy lies in his vast charitable acts. His family foundation regularly distributes millions of dollars to healthcare causes and education, with monumental donations directed to both Mount Sinai Hospital and the local university. Larry Tannenbaum was no ordinary billionaire. He was a true builder, crafting Toronto's concrete foundations and cultural soul. Many elite families chased the public spotlight, but others chose absolute secrecy. Carlo Fidani belonged firmly in that shadow group. Holding a massive $4.3 billion fortune, he ran the Orlando Corporation. They became one of the largest, most private industrial giants in the Greater Toronto Area. If one has ever worked in a modern office park, or received a package in Mississauga or Brampton, records show it was built on ground owned by the Fidani Empire. This massive fortune spans 3 generations of history. It all began in 1948, when Carlo's grandfather founded Fidani & Sons. His father, Ori, expanded operations aggressively, paving the way for total dominance. Carlo took control in the year 2000 and drove Orlando to unprecedented heights. Their blueprint was remarkably simple, yet highly effective. Acquire vast tracts of land in expanding regions, then start building. They owned and operated millions of square feet of industrial space. Today, Orlando's holdings are absolutely massive. They cover over 40 million square feet. Yet Fidani maintains a famously quiet presence. He rarely granted public interviews and avoided the media spotlight entirely. Business was his primary focus, but his impact on regional healthcare remains deeply historic. He emerged as one of the city's most significant medical benefactors, pouring massive fortunes directly into hospitals and vital research institutions. This included a landmark $10 million donation to the University of Toronto for their new medical academy in Mississauga. His legacy is preserved at the Regional Cancer Centre bearing his name. His firm also pledged millions more to transform regional healthcare facilities. Fidani represented silent influence, building his family wealth on heavy industry instead of fame. He focused on the raw land and structures supporting the entire local economy. The legacy remains twofold: an invisible empire of steel and concrete keeping trade alive, contrasted with the highly visible, life-saving impact of his medical donations. Peter Gilgan was the visionary who physically constructed Toronto's modern suburbs. That statement is barely an exaggeration for the founder of Mattamy Homes. He provided housing for an incredible number of families, transforming the Greater Toronto Area's physical landscape more than almost any other developer. Amassing a personal net worth of $6.4 billion, his career stood as a testament to aggressive growth and historic philanthropy. Eventually, Mattamy Homes became the single largest private home builder in Canada, expanding into the United States market to build over 135,000 homes across North America. Their annual revenues quickly reached the billions, driven entirely by Gilgan's genius for massive expansion. In later years, Gilgan became just as famous for his immense charity work as his business deals. He ranks among the nation's premier benefactors, focusing heavily on medicine and education. His funding reshaped entire institutions. He donated tens of millions locally, including a historic $40 million gift to the Hospital for Sick Children. Millions more went directly to St. Michael's Hospital and his namesake Research and Learning Center. These massive contributions proved his loyalty to the city that made him wealthy. From the sprawling neighborhoods his company constructed to the cutting-edge research centers his generosity funded, Peter Gilgan's impact on Toronto remains monumental. Yet in the annals of Canadian business, Mark Leonard remains a ghost, the mysterious billionaire founder behind a massive Toronto-based tech giant. He is famously private, with almost zero public photos and a strict policy of never speaking to the press. Holding a family net worth of around $5.2 billion, Leonard constructed his empire, Constellation Software, on a strategy every bit as unusual as the man himself. After earning his MBA and working briefly in the venture capital sector, he founded Constellation back in 1995. The archives reveal a model that sounds simple, but proved incredibly hard to actually pull off. Rather than desperately trying to invent the next big thing, Constellation acquires and manages small niche software firms serving highly specific industries, ranging from library management systems to complex marina operations. They buy these vertical market software businesses and simply hold on to them forever, focusing entirely on steady, profitable growth through a patient, highly disciplined approach. Constellation has quietly acquired hundreds of companies, expanding into a massive tech conglomerate valued at tens of billions, all while staying completely off the radar. His leadership style is just as unconventional. He is recognized for writing incredibly detailed, highly analytical annual letters to his shareholders. These documents became required reading for global investors, offering sharp economic insights and rare long-term thinking. Yet beyond those letters, he remains a phantom. Investigative reports reveal his colorful past, including stints as a mason, gravedigger, bouncer, and wind energy researcher, painting a portrait of a man who has lived a remarkably diverse life. His family, holding a massive stake in the enterprise, fully shares his obsession with privacy. While public records show very little of his personal charitable work, his massive influence is deeply felt through his Toronto-based empire. We are looking at a completely different kind of tech success story, one constructed not on flashy hype, but on quiet, relentless competence. Mark Leonard remains the ultimate mystery titan of Toronto, building immense wealth entirely outside the spotlight. The Rogers name is completely ubiquitous in Canada. It dominates our phone bills, television screens, sports stadiums, and even hockey jerseys. The elite Rogers family dynasty, holding a fortune valued at over $11 billion, remains a true communications powerhouse, with its central beating heart right here in Toronto. This empire first began with a single spark of genius. Back in the 1920s, Edward S. Rogers Sr. invented the first all-electric, batteryless radio in history. It was revolutionary. His promising career was tragically cut short by an early death. Yet his son, Ted Rogers, would pick up that torch, building an empire that would have completely stunned his father. In 1960, Ted Rogers purchased CHFI, then a tiny Toronto FM radio station. From that single station, he launched a relentless expansion, proving himself a true communications pioneer, diving into cable television when it was brand new, and later colonizing the wild frontier of wireless. Through decades of aggressive takeovers and extraordinarily high-stakes business gambles, he forged Rogers Communications into one of the big three telecom giants dominating Canada. This empire eventually expanded into professional sports, acquiring the Toronto Blue Jays and securing a massive stake in MLSE. The Rogers Centre stands tall in downtown Toronto, a massive monument to the family power. When Ted Rogers passed away in 2008, he left behind a highly secure, carefully structured trust to keep the empire within family hands. But that structure brought both ultimate stability and, in recent years, massive public drama. A bitter family war exploded inside the corporate boardroom just a few years ago, setting family members against each other in a fierce battle. The chaos spilled into the open, exposing the deep structural cracks that form when billions of dollars are on the line. Today, Ted's son Edward Rogers leads as chairman. The dynasty holds onto their crown. Their reach across Toronto remains absolutely staggering. From the media networks they own to the major sports teams they fund, they are everywhere. The Rogers saga is a grand tale of constant reinvention, unmatched ambition, and intense boardroom conflict. For countless generations of Canadians, the famous Weston name has defined the family dining table. From daily bread to massive weekly grocery carts, the Weston family has quietly dominated how this entire nation eats. They are an unstoppable force. A family that built a single bakery into a worldwide, multi-billion-dollar empire. This journey began back in 1882, when young George Weston purchased a simple local bread route in Toronto. He launched George Weston Limited and quickly outmaneuvered every competitor in town. It became the largest bakery in Canada. Then, his son Garfield Weston took over, with aggressive plans for expansion, swallowing rival grocery stores and conquering brand-new markets. He established the two grand pillars of their wealth, the domestic food powerhouse George Weston Limited, and an incredibly vast portfolio of prestigious international retail stores. By the third generation, Galen Weston stepped up and completely revolutionized the grocery industry. During the 1970s, he rescued their bleeding flagship brand, Loblaws. With clever branding and the launch of the iconic President's Choice label, he completely flipped the script. He built it into the most popular grocery brand in Canada. Its headquarters, set right inside the historic Maple Leaf Gardens, became a landmark. It became an institution. Later, his son Galen G. Weston became the fourth generation to step into the spotlight as the public face of Loblaws. Overseas, the dynasty acquired some of the most prestigious luxury department stores in existence, including Selfridges in the United Kingdom and Holt Renfrew in Canada. Though they recently parted with those European properties, they still hold the keys to George Weston Limited, which holds Loblaws and a massive real estate empire. This keeps their family fortune locked in the billions, allowing them to fund massive philanthropic endeavors. The Weston Family Foundation has poured hundreds of millions into nature conservation, medical research, and the arts, pouring millions into the Royal Ontario Museum and the Art Gallery of Ontario. Yet their legacy remains deeply debated. They are a beloved household name, but also a massive monopoly that dictates how millions of everyday people live and eat. Look closely at the richest woman in Canada, a quiet force sitting at the top of a global media empire. Yet she remains a total mystery to the public. Records show Sherry Brydeson is the most intensely private figure in the entire Thompson dynasty. Yet her personal wealth, estimated between $17 billion and $20 billion, easily places her at the absolute peak of Canadian society. She stands as the eldest grandchild of patriarch Roy Thompson, the founder who built this massive family empire. While she is cousin to David, Peter, and Taylor Thompson, she remains an independent force. Her immense fortune stems from a 23% ownership stake in Woodbridge, the secretive holding company that locks down all of the family assets. This massive share makes her the single largest investor in the family firm. granting her silent but absolute influence over the entire Thomson global empire. At the center of it all lies their controlling interest in Thomson Reuters, the global giant of financial data. Unlike her cousin David, who serves as the public chairman of the company, Bridson chooses to operate entirely in the shadows. She holds no formal title there, but her massive ownership stake says everything. Let that sink in. Her power is built directly into their family fortune. Operating from Toronto, Bridson has quietly funded her own personal business ventures. She owns the historic Elmwood Spa, a high-end luxury retreat located in downtown Toronto, along with the neighboring Bangkok Garden restaurant. Yet these assets are just a drop in her financial ocean. True to the family creed, she guards her privacy fiercely. She is never granted a single interview. Her life remains a total mystery, though our investigation reveals her quiet philanthropy supports critical causes like women's rights and conservation. Sherry Bridson represents the ultimate reality of inherited power. Think about it. A fortune so vast, it has no need for a public profile. She remains the quiet force pulling the strings behind a global media empire, making her one of the most intriguing and influential figures in Canadian history. Our records show that at the absolute pinnacle of power in Canada sits the legendary Thomson family. Boasting a combined family fortune now estimated at well over $70 billion, they are far more than just the wealthiest citizens in the country. They are a global dynasty, synonymous with media influence, massive data, and heavily guarded wealth. Under the leadership of David Thomson, the third Baron Thomson of Fleet, the family directs a sprawling financial empire right from their headquarters in Toronto, steering everything from international financial markets to local national news. This historic dynasty began with Roy Thomson, a classic self-made story from the 1930s. He built it starting with one small radio station in North Bay, Ontario. He quickly branched out into print, acquiring small-town newspapers all across the nation. From there, he crossed the Atlantic to become a dominant British media tycoon, eventually securing a prestigious British peerage as the first Baron Thomson of Fleet. His business philosophy was simple. He acquired newspapers strictly to generate massive profit, and he excelled at it. His son, Kenneth Thomson, was a far quieter, more contemplative sort of leader. He brilliantly pivoted the business from traditional newsprint to specialized digital information, setting the stage for the modern giant we see today. He also transformed how the family engaged with the cultural life of Toronto, rising to become one of the most significant art collectors in Canadian history. He would eventually donate thousands of masterpieces directly to the Art Gallery of Ontario, leaving behind a massive legacy. Records show their massive financial endowment completely reshaped the institution. Today, the third generation, steered by Chairman David Thomson, commands the empire. The cornerstone of their wealth remains a 69% stake in Thomson Reuters, the global news giant, all managed quietly through the family's private holding company, Woodbridge. This entity shields the vast wealth of David, his siblings, and cousin Sherry Bridson. Their reach extends to the Globe and Mail, Canada's most powerful national newspaper, alongside a significant stake in telecom titan Bell Canada. Yet despite dictating public narrative through these vast media channels, the Thomsons themselves remain famously, almost obsessively, guarded. David Thomson, in particular, actively shuns the public eye, preferring instead to curate his legendary, world-class art collection. He stands today as the premier collector of English painter John Constable. This paradox of absolute public power and fierce personal secrecy defines the Thomson dynasty. They've become the silent architects of Canada's financial and media sectors. A dynasty whose quiet dictates, issued from behind closed doors in their high-rise Toronto offices, reverberate across the globe. They remain, historically speaking, the wealthiest and most dominant family in Toronto. From the foundational era of real estate to modern tech and telecom titans, these 10 elite families essentially charted the city's meteoric growth. These are empires built on grand visions and cold, calculating ambition, secured by the sheer fortune of inheritance. A truly undeniable legacy. It is etched into the skyline, anchored in the economy, and woven into local culture. Their enterprises constructed the suburbs, dominated the retail sectors, and bought the sports franchises. Furthermore, their sweeping philanthropic efforts erected the landmark hospitals, elite universities, and public galleries that define the city's cultural soul. Yet such immense power, consolidated within so few bloodlines, inevitably invites deep scrutiny. Though one truth remains absolute, these dynasties are far more than mere residents of Toronto. They are the ultimate stakeholders, steering its historical trajectory for generations to come. For those seeking deeper insight into the hidden architectures of power, consider joining our archive by subscribing to follow more investigations into the forces shaping our modern world. Share your thoughts below on which of these powerful dynasties surprised you the most. Thank you for watching.